Have you ever thought about how the human brain, one of the most complex things on the planet, can still get totally stumped by certain concepts? I mean, we're capable of so much, building cities, launching rockets into space, and creating AI that can answer all your random Google searches. But there are some things that just make our brains do a double take. One of those things is paradoxes. Now, paradoxes are these mind-bending contradictions that make you question how reality actually works. You think the world operates in one way, but then a paradox shows up and says, "Not so fast." And guess what? Some physicists think they've finally cracked the code on one of the most famous paradoxes that's been puzzling us for 50 years. But have they really? Or is it just one of those things we'll never fully wrap our heads around? And while we're at it, what about all the other strange paradoxes out there? Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this. Let's dive into one you've probably heard of before, the Fermi paradox. Okay, picture this. We're on Earth, chilling in a relatively young planetary system compared to the vast age of the universe. But in theory, some civilizations out there could have achieved interstellar travel already, right? If that's true, then where are they? Why haven't we been visited by aliens? That's what the Fermi paradox is all about. Named after Enrico Fermi, the Italian physicist famous for building the first nuclear reactor, it's essentially a giant cosmic question mark asking, where is everybody? Some folks argue that it's not a real paradox, because we can only guess there's intelligent life out there. But here's where it gets interesting. Enter the Drake equation, a formula designed to estimate how many civilizations could be out there in our galaxy. It uses 7 variables to calculate the chances of detecting intelligent life. And back in 1961, this equation led to the idea that millions of Earth-like planets could exist out there with their own civilizations. But at the time, we didn't even know if planets outside our solar system existed. Crazy, right? Fast forward to 2020, and astronomers using data from the Kepler Space Telescope found over 300 million worlds in the Milky Way alone with conditions similar to Earth. That's right, over 300 million planets out there, possibly with liquid water, and maybe even life. And this isn't even the most cutting-edge info. We've got the James Webb Space Telescope ready to hunt down even more potentially habitable planets. Keep an eye out for that, and make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss the updates. But here's the kicker. If we know there are millions of potential planets with life out there, why haven't we heard a peep? It's like the universe is giving us the cold shoulder. Maybe we're on the verge of making contact as our technology gets better. Or maybe the aliens have already been here, and we just don't know it yet. There have been all those UFO sightings recently, right? Who knows? Maybe they're watching this video as we speak. Hey, if you're an alien, drop a comment below. Okay, now for something even weirder. Let's talk time travel. Ever heard of the bootstrap paradox? This one's wild. Imagine you're a time traveler, just go with it, and you buy a copy of Shakespeare's Hamlet from a bookstore. You hop into your time machine, zip back to the Elizabethan era, and hand the book to Shakespeare himself. Shakespeare reads it, copies it down, and takes all the credit. Over time, Hamlet gets printed, reproduced, and passed down for centuries until it winds up back in the same bookstore where you originally bought it. So, who actually wrote Hamlet? Was it Shakespeare, or was it you? That's the paradox, this endless loop where something has no clear point of origin. And yes, it's been used in sci-fi movies like Terminator and Doctor Who. Speaking of time travel mindbenders, let's hit you with another classic, the grandfather paradox. You've probably heard this one before. You're a time traveler, again, and you decide to go back in time to, well, eliminate your grandfather. I know, dark, but stay with me. If you succeed, your dad would never have been born. And if your dad wasn't born, guess what? You wouldn't exist either. So, if you don't exist, who went back in time to, handle grandpa in the first place? It's a paradox because it creates a scenario where your very existence is erased, along with your family, friends, and everything you've ever known. Some scientists think this could lead to alternate timelines or even parallel universes, which, by the way, we've covered in another video. Check out the link in the description. Now, let's take that one step further. What if instead of your grandfather, you went back in time to take out Hitler before World War II? You'd be stopping one of the darkest periods in history, right? Well, sure, but here's where it gets messy. By stopping Hitler, you eliminate the reason to go back in time in the first place. So then, what happens? Does the timeline where you did stop Hitler vanish? Or does it split off into a new reality where things could get even worse? Time travel is just begging for paradoxes like this one. You can't win. Alright, buckle up because here's where things get extra trippy. Let's talk wormholes in physics with Polchinski's paradox. Theoretical physicist Joseph Polchinski, who helped pioneer string theory, posed this paradox involving a billiard ball. Imagine you shoot a billiard ball into a wormhole, sending it back in time. The ball exits in the past, but instead of continuing its path, it collides with its past self, knocking it off course. Now, if it never enters the wormhole in the first place, how does it end up back in time to hit itself? Physics students came up with some pretty creative solutions, like the ball giving itself a glancing blow instead of knocking itself completely away, so it still follows a slightly altered path. But really, these scenarios make you question how reality could actually work. If time travel is ever possible, this is the kind of thing we'd have to deal with. And finally, let's talk about one of the biggest paradoxes in quantum mechanics: Schrödinger's cat. This one's a real head-scratcher. Imagine a cat locked in a box with a vial of poison, a radioactive material, and a Geiger counter. If the material decays, the Geiger counter detects it, triggers a hammer to break the vial, and the cat doesn't make it. But, and this is the weird part, until you open the box to check, the cat is both alive and not alive. How is that even possible? Well, it's all because of something called the observer effect. In quantum mechanics, simply observing something can change the outcome. Mind blown yet? Want an even weirder example? Let's talk about the double slit experiment, one of the most famous physics experiments of all time. Imagine you're shooting tiny particles of light, photons, through two slits in a wall. If you're not watching, the photons act like waves and create this trippy interference pattern on the wall behind. But the moment you decide to observe them, they start behaving like particles, and that wave pattern disappears. It's like the photons know you're watching them. How does that even make sense? No one really knows yet. Maybe one day, you'll be the one to solve that mystery. And last but not least, let's tackle the black hole information paradox. This one's been stumping physicists for decades. Black holes are these massive objects that suck in everything, even light, and eventually, they radiate that energy back out through something called Hawking radiation. The problem is that radiation doesn't contain any information about what the black hole originally swallowed. According to quantum mechanics, information can never be destroyed. So where does it go? Recently, scientists proposed a solution. There's an invisible surface inside the black hole, called the quantum extremal surface, that somehow encodes the information. But we're still figuring it out. So, have we solved the mysteries of these paradoxes? Maybe, maybe not. But that's what makes them so fascinating. They challenge what we think we know about reality, time, and even existence itself. If you want to dive deeper into these mysteries and stay updated on all the mind-bending discoveries coming out, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. You might just spark the next big conversation.